Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and there's quite a few settings you should review or be aware of to help you lock down or secure your iPhone. I wanted to show you not only settings for your lock screen, but also location and tracking settings, app permissions, device protection, and more. So let's get started with what you see first on your iPhone, the lock screen. We'll start off simple and then we'll move on to more advanced settings. The first thing is your lock screen. Maybe you have your lock screen set up and you don't want someone to be able to get into your phone. You need to adjust how quickly it locks. Go down to your settings, go to display and brightness, then scroll down to auto lock. I only put it on never when I'm recording a video like this so it doesn't lock during the video, but I typically use 30 seconds. Personally, I wouldn't go over 1 minute so that it locks. If you forget this, you want it to lock on its own. So if you leave your phone somewhere, you walk away, it's secure. So something simple, but definitely worth checking. Also, there's something you can do if you're on your lock screen and maybe you don't want someone to be able to gain access to your phone. You can lock it down quickly. Hold the side button and one of the two volume buttons here, so just hold them here until you actually see this screen where it says slide to power off. This now forces someone, if they tap cancel or try to unlock your phone, to place your passcode here. So once you have that, it will now force the passcode, and also there's another setting you want to consider. So if you put in the wrong passcode, for example, you can force your phone to erase on its own. So if I just put in this one, if I do this 10 times, I can actually have the phone erase itself so that no one can gain access to my personal data. So let's go ahead and log in. So to go along with auto lock, if someone grabs your phone, you'll want to set this up so that it could auto erase. Now, of course, if you don't know your passcode, you forget it a lot. This could be dangerous because you may erase your phone, but as long as you have it backed up, you're good to go there. But again, if we go into our settings, go to Face ID and passcode, and under Face ID and passcode, if we scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll see an option for erase data. It says erase all data on this iPhone after 10 failed passcode attempts. If you enable this, it will erase after someone tries to gain access to your phone 10 times. So if we turn this on, it will warn you one more time, tap enable, and now it's secure. Now just keep in mind that if you don't know your passcode, you forget it often, it could wipe your phone. Now, if we scroll up just a little bit, again under Face ID and passcode, the final thing I'd consider for your lock screen has to do with what's allowed when your phone is locked. You'll see these are all the options that I have enabled by default. It says allow access when locked, Today View and Search, Notification Center, Control Center, Lock Screen Widgets, Live Activities, Siri, Reply with iMessage or Messages, Home Control, Wallet, Return Missed Calls, and Workout Health Data. Typically, I would recommend at least turning off the Control Center. Maybe you want to leave Lock Screen Widgets enabled, but if I turn all of these off, it will lock down my phone and be more secure. Now, I prefer to use Siri, but if I turn most of these off here, we'll go ahead and turn all of these off. When I go to my lock screen here and the phone is locked, I no longer have access even to my widgets down at the bottom. If I pick my phone up, go ahead and tap on it, it unlocks, my widgets then show up. So this is something I would select based on your use case and how secure you want your phone. Now, locking down your phone is great, but when it comes to your personal data, it can be spread everywhere online, but you can lock it down with today's sponsor, Incogni. When your personal data is exposed, it can be found on search engines, shady directories, multiple websites, leading to identity theft and scams. Not only could your data be exposed, but your email, phone number, address, social security number, and relatives info is being bought and sold by bad actors. Incogni tracks down and removes your personal data automatically from online directories, commercial databases, people's search sites, and many other sites as well that might have your data. Incogni also has a custom removal tool that can take down just about everything. Send Incogni a link and a dedicated privacy expert will help you remove your data. You simply create an account with Incogni, authorize them to remove data for you, and then you'll start seeing entries found online about you with requests to remove your data within minutes. When the data is removed, they let you know. I've used Incogni for over a year now, and they've removed 1,151 entries for me. They've sent 1,247, there's 120 scheduled, and 96 in progress. This has saved me 863 hours and 15 minutes. This is something I definitely couldn't have done on my own, and it saves me tons of time and removes my personal data online. Be sure to check them out to secure your data with the link in the description below. Now, the next thing you may or may not be familiar with is you can lock your apps that have personal data in them. For example, if you want to lock photos, press and hold, and you can have it require Face ID. If I do that, it says this app will require Face ID or your passcode to open or show content in other apps. App content will not appear in notification previews or Spotlight. That's because this is photos. So if you require Face ID, it will require it everywhere and lock down the app individually. This works through many apps. So if we go through, maybe we want possibly the wallet app here, we can require Face ID. We can even do this on third-party apps as well. For this app, for example, require Face ID. We can lock any app individually. So if you want to do that, you can require a passcode for it, locking down that individual app. The next thing we need to take a look at has to do with the overall apps and if they're allowed to use your microphone and camera or access your photos. You can find this under Settings, and then we'll go down to Privacy and Security, and then if we scroll down again, you'll see a whole section dedicated to camera as well as microphone. For example, if we go into microphone, you can see all of the applications that have access to my microphone. If maybe I don't want Final Cut Camera to have access, I can turn it off. The same is true with Facebook. Maybe we'll leave Facebook off, turn Instagram off, for example. Any application that's a social media application that maybe you think is listening to you, this is where you can actually see if they have access to your microphone, where Apple actually locks the app out of accessing the microphone. So take a look at that, disable it if you want to, or leave it enabled based on your use case. If we go back, you can see the same thing with camera, for example. Some applications you'll want to use the camera, others you won't. For example, if we scroll down, this is actually a lawnmower. I don't need a lawnmower to use the camera, so we'll turn that off. The same is true with maybe a few different apps here. If we scroll down, I don't need Instagram to use my camera if I'm not posting. If I do, leave it on. The same is true for anything else, whether it's a bank or anything such as TikTok, Tesla, or anything else that we have here. So again, go through this one by one, disable it if you're not going to want it to have access to that. The same is true with photos. So if we scroll up, you can see photos. Again, you'll want to go through these one by one. If we go into photos, you'll see specific applications may have full access. For example, I don't necessarily want all of my applications to have full access to my photo library. So if we scroll down, go into Snapchat, for example, we can give it full access, edit the selected photos, or change it to none so they have no access whatsoever. Now again, within privacy and security, another thing you'll want to consider is tracking. Apple has the ability to block applications from allowing apps to request to track. So you'll see I have this turned off, meaning no application can track another application. If I turn this on, it will say allow apps to ask to track your activity. So it's a little bit confusing here, but if you disable this, no apps can talk to other apps. So they're all turned off. You could turn this on individually, but it says apps that have asked for permission to track your activity with an identifier will appear here. Tracking activity is blocked by apps that you've denied access to. So I typically just leave it off. Now apps can't talk to one another. I don't need them knowing what other apps are doing, so I leave it off altogether. The next settings I would take a look at have to do with Safari. Safari does a pretty good job of blocking information and trackers between sites, and you can see some of that privacy information down here at the bottom. If we tap on our menu options, tap on our options again, you can even see a privacy report and other information. However, there's one setting I would typically look for to enable. If we go into our settings, then we scroll down to apps, then go to Safari. Within Safari, scroll all the way to the bottom and you'll see Advanced. Within Advanced, we have Advanced Tracking and Fingerprinting Protection. This is something I would leave enabled. It may be off already or just for private browsing. I typically turn it on for all browsing. Basically, you can enable this to help keep your information as private as possible. It's a privacy feature that blocks complex methods websites use to identify and follow you. This can follow you across websites, it combines URL cleaning, and removes tracking codes with anti-fingerprinting, or makes it harder to get your device info. So if you leave that on, it just keeps things a little bit more private. There are a couple things I would recommend taking a look at and considering changing based on your overall use case. Now you'll see this little arrow here. This lets me know that something recently used my location. That's okay if specific apps use that, but you want to be aware of what those are. That can be found under Settings, again if we go down to Privacy and Security, this time under Location Services. Of course, you want to enable location services to use things such as Find My, navigation apps, or just locating you for specific things. If you don't want any of that, you can turn it off, but that will turn off some specific features. So the first thing is, in order to see this little arrow here so that we know that maybe locations were being used, scroll to the bottom and you'll actually see under System Services, where we scroll to the bottom again, we have status bar icon. If that's enabled, you'll see a status here. It says show the location services icon in the status bar when the services above request your location. If you don't want to know about that, you can leave it disabled and you'll never see it. But if you do, it gives you a couple different things here. A gray arrow indicates that an item has used your location in the last 24 hours, and a purple arrow indicates that an item has recently used your location, so it lets you know. If we scroll back up in System Services, you'll see all of the purple arrows of things that have actually been used recently. Now, a lot of people recommend turning off significant locations and routes. However, I typically don't turn that off as it's used for navigation and suggestions. If you don't care about any of that, you can disable it. However, Apple does specifically say on their website that optimized battery charging will not work if this is off. However, some people have said it works anyway. But on Apple's website, they actually say if this is turned off, it won't work when it comes to battery. And if we go into significant locations and routes, I can show you that I have it on. At the top here, it says allow your iPhone and other iCloud connected devices to learn places significant to you as well as routes you take often in order to provide useful location-related information in maps, calendars, photos, and more. Your significant locations and routes are end-to-end encrypted and cannot be read by Apple. So that's why I leave it on. You may not want to leave it on, but I find it useful for certain services I use elsewhere. But if you don't need it, you can turn it off. Also on Apple's battery website, like I mentioned before, and on Apple's website, this says if optimized battery charging doesn't activate. If we scroll down here, you'll see the feature doesn't engage when your charging habits are more variable, when you travel, or you charge for short periods of time. Because of this, some location settings must be enabled for optimized battery charging to activate. And you'll see here where they actually show you to go to Settings, Privacy and Security, Location Services, and turn that on, as well as significant locations here under Step 3. So those things have to be on in order for that to work, so just keep that in mind. Back within System Services, if we scroll down, you'll see it has Product Improvement. Now, I have these disabled right now, but you may want to consider leaving some of these on. The reason for this is it says allow Apple to use your frequent location information to improve maps. For example, maybe you're using Apple Maps to travel, and along your route, it finds that there's a very heavy traffic area. This is how it's getting that information anonymously. So maybe you have routing or routing and traffic turned on, then it sort of anonymously sends that information to Apple. They know that it's busy in a specific area on a highway, and it lets you know in Apple Maps. That's how that works. So if you benefit from that, you may want to keep that on. If you don't, turn it off and it won't be seen. All of the other things here could be very helpful, so I wouldn't necessarily recommend turning everything off. For example, Find My iPhone, you would want this enabled in order to find your iPhone using Find My. So just take a look at each one of these. They're pretty straightforward, but I typically leave most of these enabled. And on the Location Services page, you may want to customize this on a per app basis. Typically, I have these set up for while using. For example, the wallet, it may want to know the location so I could pay a vendor. That's pretty typical, so I have it while using. Certain applications I don't need, other applications it's fine, again, while I'm using it, but other than that, I don't really need it using my location all the time. So it says while using and more for Apple Maps, as it needs to use that location to help give me that navigation information. So again, customize it on a per app basis. Again, if we go back into Privacy and Security, this time scroll down to the bottom and you'll see an option here for wired accessories. This is something I would customize based on overall use case. For example, currently it's set to automatically allow when unlocked. This allows things plugged into the USB-C port, such as a Mac, to automatically connect as long as it's unlocked. That's typically okay because I'm usually at home, and if I unlock this, it's going to be me and no one else. However, if you're concerned with this, you can have it set to always ask. So if I go ahead and plug in my Mac here that's connected to the other end of this USB-C cable, it will then prompt me to connect. It says allow accessory to connect. Do you want to connect the USB accessory to this iPhone? And it will only allow it to connect if you tap allow. So it will do that on a per device basis. We can trust it, put in our passcode, and it will never prompt us again. Now again, if we go back into Privacy and Security, another feature I would enable has to do with if your phone gets stolen or someone takes it out of your hand quickly and wants to change your passcode. If we scroll down to the bottom, there's a newer option called Stolen Device Protection. If we go into this, you'll see I have this enabled already, and it says require security delay when I'm away from familiar locations. Again, something utilizing the location information. It says a delay will be required when you are not at a familiar location, such as your home or work, to change security settings. If you have this enabled, you can have it set to always, but if you try to turn this off and you're not at home or your work or something familiar, it will then make you wait an hour to change the passcode. This should give you enough time to maybe get to another computer, a service center or something to either recover your device or lock it down even further. So this is something I would highly recommend enabling, as if you go to turn it off, I can turn it off, it asks for Face ID, then it's off. But if I have it set to always, it will give me a security delay. So if I do this, you'll see a delay will always be required to change security settings. If I turn it off now, it will then delay it, and it says security delay required to change stolen device protection. So you can start it or learn more. So they'll still have to take at least an hour to do that. Another thing I would recommend enabling has to do with locking down your data even further. If we go into settings, tap on your name at the top. This time, if you use iCloud, go into iCloud and scroll down a little bit to the bottom. You'll see advanced data protection. This is something I would recommend enabling as long as you have your private security key and you can remember it. For example, it says iCloud encrypts your data to keep it secure. Advanced data protection uses end-to-end encryption to ensure that the iCloud data types listed here can only be decrypted on your trusted devices, protecting your information even in the case of a data breach in the cloud. This means Apple and no one else has the advanced keys for this. So you'll see here, if we scroll down, you can recover your account, but you'll need your recovery key in order to actually unlock this. So if you can manage that key, keep that handy, print it off, put it in a safe, then you're good to go. If you don't have access to this, well, then I wouldn't recommend enabling it. But it definitely is helpful and encrypts all the information here, such as messages, iCloud Drive, notes, photos, and more. Now, for the most extreme and advanced security, there's one other setting I would recommend. Scroll down again to privacy and security, this time all the way to the bottom, and you'll see lockdown mode. If we go into lockdown mode, it says turn on this extreme protection if you believe you're being targeted in a cyber attack. Apps, websites, and features functionality will be limited, and some experiences may be completely unavailable. So this is only an extreme measure. If maybe you're having an issue here, you can learn more about it on support.apple.com, and it talks about exactly what it does. It locks everything down, Apple services, and much more. Then you can turn it on and then turn it off as needed. So you can exclude apps or websites from lockdown mode as well. So if you need the most extreme protection, you can enable it, read all about it here, and then configure it on a per app basis depending on your needs. So this is only for someone that may be highly targeted or that just needs to have this locked down for a little bit while you change some other information. Now, in the event that someone takes your phone, there's a way to actually remotely erase this if you need to do that, as long as you have access to Find My. You can typically access this on a website, or you can access this on one of your devices. So if you know your iCloud login, you can get access to that. But again, if we go over to Find My, so we're in Find My, I've tapped on my device here. You'll see I have my iPhone Air selected that I have right here, and there's a couple different options. Now, if you just left it behind somewhere and you're trying to locate it, I actually had to use Lost Mode once that I have here because I left my iPad on an airplane once. I was able to recover it thanks to this feature. It says enable additional protection. So if we go into this, you'll see here it says Lost Mode. You can lock it as soon as this device is online. Lost Mode will lock down certain features. It protects payment cards and shows contact info so someone can return it to you. So that's one way to recover it. However, if you've lost it completely, you can erase it. So down at the bottom, it says Settings and Erase. So again, if we tap on this a couple times, it says Erase iPhone. All content and settings will be erased when this iPhone connects to the internet. If Find My Network is enabled, you will still be able to locate this iPhone. So even after you erase it, if you're using Find My, you can still locate it. So if you're concerned about your information getting out there, this is a great way to lock it down just to make sure no one can access your information. Now, finally, there's a couple more things you may want to consider if you want to keep an eye on what's going on your iPhone. Again, go into Settings, scroll down to Privacy and Security, and then again, down at the bottom, you have a couple different things here under Transparency Logs, App Privacy Report, and Apple Intelligence Report. Now, some people have suggested this takes up a lot of power. Typically, the logs are just there. It's just saving them. So if you turn on App Privacy Report, it says it records data and sensor access, app and website network activity, and the most frequently contacted domains. It will then create a report for you and let you know exactly what's going on your phone with applications. The same is true with Apple Intelligence. If we enable this, you'll see it says export duration. We can turn it on, 7 days, and it says this report is stored on device and may include personal data such as messages and text you enter and intelligent writing tools. So if you're using Apple Intelligence, it's all on device, but you can access it here and see exactly what Apple Intelligence is doing. So if you want more information about that, I would recommend enabling it and see what you find. So those are 15 important security settings to help you lock down your iPhone, make it more private, and customize the overall security based on your own use case. I'd love to hear from you how you use it in the comments below. If you actually customize the location settings or anything else, you can change some of those to help with battery overall as well, but they will reduce some overall functionality. But again, let me know how you've customized yours, and of course I'll link this wallpaper in the description like I normally do. If you haven't subscribed already though, please subscribe, and if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.